41. The Fox with the Cropped Tail. A fox, having had his tail cut by a trap, was so ashamed that he judged his life impossible. So, resolving to urge the other foxes to shorten their tails in the same way in order that he could hide his personal infirmity in a communal mutilation, he assembled them all together. He advised them to cut their tails, saying that full tails were not only ugly, but were a useless extra weight and an obsolete appendage. But one of the other foxes, acting as a spokesman, said, "Hey friend, if it wasn't in your own interest, you wouldn't be giving us this advice." This fable concerns those who give advice not out of kindness, but through self-interest. 42. The Fox Who Had Never Seen a Lion. There was a fox who had never seen a lion, but one day he happened to meet one of these beasts face to face. On this first occasion he was so terrified that he felt he would die of fear. He encountered him again, and this time he was also frightened, but not so much as the first time. But on the third occasion when he saw him, he actually plucked up the courage to approach him and began to chat. This fable shows that familiarity soothes our fears. 43. The Fox and the Monster Mask. A fox, having crept into an actor's house, rummaged through his wardrobe and found, among other things, a large, beautifully fashioned mask of a monster. He held it in his paws and exclaimed, "Ah, what a head! But it hasn't got a brain." This fable refers to men who have magnificent bodies but poor judgment. 44. The Two Men Who Quarrelled About the Gods. Two men were quarrelling about whether the god Theseus or the god Heracles was the greater. But the two gods, losing their tempers with them, revenged themselves each on the country of the other. The quarrels of underlings incite their masters to be angry with them. 45. The Murderer. A man who had committed a murder was being pursued by the parents of his victim. Arriving at the edge of the Nile, he came face to face with a wolf. He was so scared that he climbed up into a tree at the waterside where he hid himself. But there he caught sight of a huge serpent which was slithering its way towards him. So he dropped down into the river, but in the river a crocodile ate him up. This fable shows that criminals pursued by the gods are not safe in any element, whether earth, air, or water. 46. The Man Who Promised the Impossible. A poor man was very ill and not expected to live. As the doctors were about to give up hope for him, he appealed to the gods, promising to offer up to them 100 oxen and to consecrate to them some votive offerings if he recovered. The man's wife, who was at his side, asked him, "And where are you going to get the money to pay for all that?" The man told her, "Do you think I might get better so the gods can call me to account?" This fable shows that men readily make promises which in reality they have no intention of keeping. 47. The Coward and the Ravens. A cowardly man set out to go to war, but having heard the croak of some ravens, he lay down his arms and froze stock still. After a while he picked up his arms and again began to march, but the ravens croaked again. He stopped, and then he said to them, "You can croak as loud as you like, but you aren't going to make a meal of me." This fable aims at those who are excessively timid. 48. The Man Bitten by an Ant and Hermes. One day, a sailing ship sank to the bottom of the sea with all its passengers. A man who was a witness to the shipwreck claimed that the decrees of the gods were unjust, for to lose a single impious person, they had also made the innocent perish. There were a great many ants on the spot where he was standing. As he was saying this, it happened that one of them bit him. In order to kill it, he crushed them all. Then Hermes appeared to him and struck him with his wand, saying, "And now do you not admit that the gods judge men in the same way you judge the ants?" Don't blaspheme against the gods. When misfortune befalls, examine your own faults. 49. The husband and the troublesome wife. A man had a wife who was extremely rude to all the servants of the house. He wanted to know if she would behave the same towards his father's staff, and he sent her to visit his paternal home under a pretext. When she returned some days later, he asked her how the servants had received her. "The herdsmen and the shepherds scowled at me," she said. The husband replied, "Well, woman, if you weren't welcomed by the servants who take the herds out at dawn and don't return until sunset, what about those you had to spend all day with?" It is thus that the little things reveal the big things, and that the things which are visible reveal those which are hidden. 50. The mischievous man. A mischievous man bet someone that he could prove that the oracle of Delphi was a fraud. On a date which he had agreed, he took a little sparrow in his hand and hid it under his cloak, and then made his way to the temple. There he faced the oracle and asked if the object which he held in his hand was living or lifeless. He wished, if the god replied lifeless, to show the living sparrow; if the god said living, to present the sparrow after having strangled it. But the god, recognizing his false intentions, replied, "Enough, man, for it depends on you whether what you are holding is dead or alive." This fable shows that the god defies all surprise. 51. The braggart. A man who practiced the pentathlon, but whom his fellow citizens continually reproached for his unmanliness, went off one day to foreign parts. After some time he returned, and he went around boasting of having accomplished many extraordinary feats in various countries, but above all of having made such a jump when he was in Rhodes that not even an athlete crowned at the Olympic Games could possibly equal it. And he added that he would produce as witnesses of his exploit people who had actually seen it if ever they came to his country. Then one of the bystanders spoke out, "But if this is true, my friend, you have no need of witnesses, for here is Rhodes right here. Make the jump." This fable shows that as long as one can prove something by doing, talk is superfluous. 52. The middle-aged man and his mistresses. A middle-aged man who was going grey had two mistresses, one young and the other old. Now she who was advanced in years had a sense of shame at having sexual intercourse with a lover younger than herself, and so she did not fail, each time that he came to her house, to pull out all of his black hairs. The young mistress, on her part, recoiled from the idea of having an old lover, and so she pulled out his white hairs. Thus it happened that, plucked in turn by the one and then the other, he became bald. That which is ill-matched always gets into difficulties. 53. The shipwrecked man. A rich Athenian was sailing with some other travellers. A violent tempest suddenly arose and the boat capsized. Then, while the other passengers were trying to save themselves by swimming, the Athenian continually invoked the aid of the goddess Athena, patroness of his city, and promised offering after offering if only she would save him. One of his shipwrecked companions who swam beside him said to him, "Appeal to Athena by all means, but also move your arms." We also invoke the gods, but we mustn't forget to put in our own efforts to save ourselves. We count ourselves lucky if, in making our own efforts, we obtain the protection of the gods. But if we abandon ourselves to our fate, the daemons alone can save us. 54. The blind man. A blind man was in the habit of recognizing by touch every creature which he held in his hands, saying what kind it was. Then one day somebody handed him a wolf cub. He felt it and was unsure. "I don't know," he said, "if it be the young of a wolf or a fox or one of the other animals of the same family. But what I do know is that it is not to be put among a flock of sheep." It is thus that a wicked nature is often recognized by its exterior. 55. The cheat. A poor man, being very ill and getting worse, promised the gods to sacrifice to them 100 oxen if they saved him from death. The gods, wishing to put him to the test, restored him to health very quickly. Soon he was up and out of bed. But as he didn't really have any oxen, he modelled 100 of them out of tallow and burned them on an altar, saying, "Receive my votive offerings, O gods." But the gods, wanting to trick him in their turn, sent him a dream, saying that if he would go to the seashore it would result in 1,000 Athenian drachmas for him. Unable to contain his joy, he ran to the beach, where he came across some pirates who took him away and sold him into slavery. And they did indeed obtain 1,000 Athenian drachmas for him. This fable is well applied to a liar. 56. The charcoal burner and the fuller. A charcoal burner who carried on his trade in a certain house noticed that a fuller had established himself nearby. So he went to see him and urged him to come and live with him. He said they were so close that they could live with much less expense if they shared a single dwelling. But the fuller replied, "That is out of the question, for whatever I will clean you will blacken with soot." This fable shows that one cannot unite dissimilar natures. 57. The men and Zeus. They say that the animals were made first, that Zeus granted to some strength, to others speed, and to others wings, but that man remained naked and said, "Me alone you have left without favor." Zeus replied, "You have not taken notice of the gift I have granted you, and yet you have the most, for you have got the power of speech, which is mighty with the gods and with men. It is mightier than the powerful, swifter than the fastest." And then, recognizing the gift of Zeus, man went on his way in reverence and gratitude. All men have been favored by Zeus, who has given them language, but certain of them are indifferent to such a gift and prefer to envy the animals who are devoid of both feelings and speech. 58. The man and the fox. There was a man who had a grudge against a fox, for the fox had caused him some damage. He managed to seize it, and in order to take his full revenge, he tied a rope which had been dipped in oil to his tail. He set fire to the rope and let him go, but prompted by some god, the fox ran into the man's fields and set fire to all his crops, as it was harvest time. The man ran after him helplessly, lamenting his lost crops. One must be lenient and not allow oneself to be carried away uncontrollably, for it often happens that people easily angered cause even greater harm to themselves than to those they wish to injure, and increase the problems they had already. 59. The man and the lion traveling together. A man and a lion were traveling along together one day when they began to argue about which of them was the stronger. Just then they passed a stone statue representing a man strangling a lion. "There, you see, we are stronger than you," said the man, pointing it out to the lion. But the lion smiled and replied, "If lions could make statues, you would see plenty of men under the paws of lions." Many people boast of how brave and fearless they are, but when put to the test are exposed as frauds. 60. The man and the satyr. It is said that once a man entered into friendship with a satyr. Winter had come and the cold weather with it, so the man raised his hands to his mouth and blew upon them. The satyr asked him why he did that. The man replied that he was warming his hands because of the cold. Then they were served a meal. As the food was very hot, the man took it in small portions, raised them to his mouth, and blew on them. The satyr again asked him why he acted thus. The man replied that it cooled his meal because it was too hot. "Oh, well, friend," said the satyr, "I give up on your friendship because you blow hot and cold from the same mouth." We conclude that we should shun friendship with those whose character is ambiguous.